Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to yet another episode of Cricket Mehfil. I'm your host, Babar Azam, and today we will be reflecting on England's historic tour to Pakistan after 17 long years in what is perhaps the most special episode we've ever had of Cricket Mehfil, and without doubt, the most important interview I have ever hosted in my short career thus far. For we have with us a very special guest and former English Test captain and renowned cricket commentator who is much loved and celebrated across the globe, Michael Andrew Atherton. Athers, first of all, thank you so much for taking out the time. It's an absolute privilege to be able to record with you, and I hope you're keeping well.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, had a lovely month in Pakistan, and then went away for a couple of weeks over Christmas. So I had a little bit of time off. Back in England now, it's absolutely freezing. So looking forward to getting to New Zealand in a couple of weeks for England's Test match tour there.
Yeah, it's gotten quite cold over here as well since you've left. And I just want to, as a starter, before we even talk about the cricket, just want you to reflect on your time in Pakistan. I know you've been here a couple of times since 2000, but this, if I'm not wrong, was your first experience as a broadcaster in the country. So talk about that and how the reception was and your welcome. And also, lastly, how, in the grand scheme of things, how important was this tour of England to Pakistan for a full test series, given that this country is now penciled in to hopefully host the Asia Cup later this year and the Champions Trophy in 2025?
Yeah, you're right. It was the first time that I'd broadcasted on cricket in Pakistan. You're right to say I've been back a couple of times since the Test match tour that I played in 2000. And it was those couple of times that I'd come back, once to do something with Imran, once to do something on the return of cricket to Pakistan, that made me realize how important these tours are because of that long exile that Pakistan endured, with their cricket in UAE. I was very aware that these tours to Pakistan were considered to be absolutely vital for the future of cricket there. Obviously, that people were exceptionally grateful for teams and broadcasters accompanying those teams who would come, and therefore the welcome was always a warm one. People, can't do enough for you. They're very grateful and thankful, and therefore, you're treated with tremendous kindness. So I was aware of all that, which is why I thought it was important England came. They pulled out of the short tour last year. I was pretty outspoken about that. But very thankful to see relations restored between the two countries, with England adding the T20s that they'd pulled out of onto the back of what was supposed to be a 5 test match series. That became a 7 test match series. And then obviously the tour just completed. So it was a really important tour for Pakistan mainly, but also for England, just to show solidarity and the players. To get a chance to go to a country, obviously, that many of them had not been before. Some had been because of the PSL. I think only James Anderson of that squad had been involved in a test match tour before. Anderson was a young bowler on that 2005 tour. And it's very rare these days that you get to go to a tour to a place where you've not been. The cricket circuit is quite a small one. The players are constantly touring the same venues and the same places over and over again. So for many of them, this was a new experience, and it was a new experience for many of the broadcasters as well. And I think it was, it was a terrific experience for everybody. The cricket was interesting to watch for the most part. The broadcasters enjoyed going back there to a place they'd not been before. And I know that England's cricketers enjoyed their time in Pakistan as well. So it was a triumph all round.
Yeah, well, we absolutely loved having you guys here. And even though the results didn't quite go in Pakistan's favor, but it was a memorable tour for England, of course, having become the first side to whitewash Pakistan in their own backyard. And we'll talk more about that, of course. But first, let's talk about Bazball. Now, ever since Brendan McCullum and Ben Stokes have had that partnership as coach and captain, in 10 test matches, England have won 9 times, which is a staggering record, really. And we've seen them sort of revolutionize the way Test cricket is played. They just come out and go berserk, and they take the game by the scruff of its neck. And we've seen them force results in games that were surely headed towards draws. So that's very, very commendable. And I want you to talk a bit about that and how you feel about Bazball, and whether or not you feel it's sustainable when, let's say, England tour India or Sri Lanka, where the pitches will assist spin a lot, or even, Australia, where the pitches will have a lot of bounce and the added pressure of an Ashes series?
Well, so far, everybody, as regards Bazball, which of course Brendan McCullum hates that term, but it's stuck now. I don't think it's going anywhere. But everybody is constantly throwing things forward. So when England beat New Zealand, it was, wait till India come. And then when England beat India in that one-off test match, it was wait till South Africa's fast bowlers come. And then when they beat South Africa, it was wait till you go to Pakistan. And now it's wait till Australia come, and so on and so forth. I mean, I can't predict the future. All I know is that every hurdle that's been put in front of them so far, they've jumped over with style and panache. It has been a remarkable transformation from this time last year, where England ended up in the Ashes 4-0 down, almost whitewashed there, to the confidence now that's surging through the team, having brought young players into the team like Harry Brook and Rayan Ahmed. And it's been, with the odd change, it's been pretty much the same set of players that had played in the previous couple of years and had only won one test in 17. So it's been a remarkable transformation through a change of leadership. And is it sustainable? Well, I don't know. As I say, I don't have a crystal ball, but given how they're playing, who's to say that it won't be sustainable? I think it's just England have, for a while under Chris Silverwood and Joe Root, they started their test match teams and white ball teams started to diverge and become slightly different. Whereas I think what Stokes and McCullum and Rob Key have found or thought is that their strength actually is in their white ball game and their white ball batsmen, and that they're just very aggressive in outlook. So they're trying to play to their strengths. Now, other teams may have different strengths and we'll play to those strengths. But for the moment, England feel that their best chance of succeeding is to utilise and exploit the talents of the likes of Bairstow and Brook, and these very aggressive players allied with the likes of Joe Root, who's just a top class all-round player. So for now, it's working. It's been a thrilling ride so far. I think the Ashes are going to be absolutely fantastic. I know England have got to go to New Zealand first for a couple of tests, but when Australia come, that is going to be a humdinger of a series. Australia haven't won in England since 2001. It is quite a tough place to win England because of the slightly unique circumstances of the Duke's ball and the pitches that do more off the seam than anywhere else in the world, and teams have found it difficult to come and win. So it's going to be a classic series, I think. And I think England are not going to take a step back, and Australia, knowing how Australia play, I suspect they'll try and go toe-to-toe with England.
Yeah, absolutely. We're all looking forward to it. And just, as outsiders, of course, to the Ashes series, to see this McCullum and Stokes partnership, come to the fore and really, mesmerize us all, almost capture our imagination. It's just been great viewing. And I know Pakistan was, on the receiving end of it recently, but it's just amazing entertainment. And I'm sure most Pakistanis will attest to that. Moving forward, you talked about Harry Brook. Of course, he's been an absolute revelation in Test cricket. Made his debut versus South Africa, didn't get very many runs. But then on this tour to Pakistan, he scored a ton in every single game on each of those venues and deservedly bagged the Player of the Series award as well. And, the Yorkshireman has had experience playing in Pakistan, playing in the PSL and winning it, of course, with the Lahore Qalandars. So, furthermore, how important do you think this PSL connection is to England players? Because both Ben Duckett and Harry Brook found a lot of success on this tour, and both of them had already played in Pakistan versus those same kind of bowlers on those same sort of surfaces. So how crucial do you think the PSL is towards their development?
Well, it's an interesting question. I put it to Harry Brook, actually, in an interview I did with him before the second test in Multan. And I said, how important was the PSL experience? And on one hand, he said it was important. It's always good to go to a country where you've done well and you feel comfortable. He's got a much better record in Pakistan than Australia, say. He's struggled in the Big Bash a bit and struggled more so in the World T20. So he's comfortable in Pakistan. But he said it wasn't so much to do with the PSL or the country per se, just the fact that the pitches are very batter friendly in Pakistan. So it was that above all. He said, who doesn't like as a batter to be playing in Pakistan on pitches that don't really bounce much above stump high, that don't really deviate very much. So if you're a young batter going to Pakistan, it is a lovely place to go and bat. So that was the point that he made, really. It was just that the conditions are so favorable for batting that, he felt very comfortable and confident that things were going to go well for him. But I think, just returning to a place where you've done well, it's like any ground that you turn up to as a player. If you've got a good record there, if you see your name on the honours board, if you know you've done well, you walk through the gates of that ground a little more confident and with a bit more of a spring in your step than you will do otherwise. So I've no doubt that ahead of the tour to Pakistan, Brook was pretty confident and obviously played superbly throughout those 3 test matches. His batting, to go back to your previous point about pushing victories in games that look destined to be drawn. It's hard to think that previous England teams would have won those test matches just because of the rate at which Ben Stokes' team scored. To score between 5 and 7 runs and over, which they did consistently throughout that tour, is of a different magnitude to what England teams certainly have done there before.
Yeah, it was unlike anything we've ever seen. I remember the first day of the tour, England scored like 505 runs on day 1 of the Rawalpindi test. So yeah, that was quite alarming. And again, like I was in the press box. It was my first experience. And I was like, okay, this isn't bad, It's good entertainment, great value for money. A little more on Harry Brook, Athers, is that this guy looks like the real deal when it comes to all formats of cricket. So how excited are you with him as a prospect, especially in that test team? Because when Johnny Bairstow returns, that is looking like a mighty difficult batting lineup to get through.
Yeah, I've no idea what they're going to do. It's a fiendishly difficult problem. These things often sort themselves out. Somebody might, get injured in New Zealand or ahead of the Ashes. Who knows? But if everybody's fit, what England will do, is going to be a very interesting question. In terms of Brook as an all-format player, one of the really nice things to hear in the interview I did with him in Multan was his enthusiasm to play 5-day cricket. He obviously loves T20 cricket. He's a dasher. He's not going to hang around in the middle. But he said he's very committed to playing Test cricket. So that was good to hear, because if those the brightest and best young players coming through have got no love for Test cricket, then that's a difficult problem for the game to have going forward. But he said absolutely that he was committed to the 5-day game. And that's the other thing about the Stokes-McCullum revolution, if you want to call it that. It's making Test cricket very attractive for these young players. They see how much fun England's Test players are having, and they want to be a part of it. They want to buy into it. So that's kind of keeping the likes of Brook, Duckett, Livingston, Jacks, all these kind of multi-format players who are thought probably more so, for their expertise in white ball cricket. It's keeping them engaged with the long format of the game, and keeping them wanting to play Test cricket. So that's a good thing. And Brook said, he's going to continue to be a T20 player, and all the opportunities that are there for him. And of course, he's just been sold for over $1 million in the IPL. So he's got a huge payday there, but he's committed to Test cricket. So that's good to hear.
Yeah, that's especially, very important with the times, because you see someone like Will Smeed, so talented, and he's given up on his red ball career because he wants to focus on white ball cricket. So yes, that is very, very heartening to see that Harry Brook has made that call and has voiced those opinions to you. And of course, he's a fan favorite in Pakistan anyway. Lahore Qalandars fans absolutely love him, having given them their first PSL title. Moving on, Athers, you alluded to the pitches in Pakistan being very, very batter friendly, and they have come under a lot of scrutiny as well. Barring the Rawalpindi pitch, I thought that they weren't as bad. Multan was a good pitch, and we got a great test match over there in which no brave declarations were required. And then England completely steamrolled Pakistan in Karachi. So I don't think the pitch has to be of any concern over there. But from a Pakistan perspective, you're the home team. You want to have some sort of an advantage. So what do you think the pitches should have been like that could have suited Pakistan's skill set better?
Well, I think when you go abroad, every country has its the pitches have a certain flavour or a certain character. You go to Australia, they bounce a bit more. You go to England, they'll move a bit more off the seam. You go to India and Sri Lanka, and they'll spin. My experience, which was not a broad experience of Pakistan, because I only played 3 Test matches there, but when I did play there, and then I was there for the World Cup in '96, was that they were just flat. They were like slabs of concrete, and they didn't do anything. The ball didn't seam, and I just thought, my God, if I'd have played my whole career here, it would have been a lovely thing as an opening batter. So you're aware that, you're going to go, and the pitches are generally going to be more batter friendly than perhaps some other parts of the world. But I thought the Pindi pitch took that to extremes. I mean, there was no deterioration over 5 days. It didn't do anything. It didn't give the bowlers any help whatsoever. And the whole point of playing a game over 5 days is that the conditions will change, and that change then offers a challenge to the players. And that didn't seem to me to be the case in Pindi. So I thought it was right that it was marked down. As you say, Multan and Karachi, it spun from the start a bit. So there was something there for the bowlers. In terms of what would suit Pakistan, I mean, again, my experience of having played against Pakistan is that their strength actually was as much in their pace bowling stocks as their spinners. I mean, they had 2 great spinners when I played, Mushtaq and Saqlain. We've had lots of good spinners since and before, but they've also had those great fast bowlers. And, you don't want to have pitches that are going to flog these fast bowlers to death, or at least offer them absolutely no hope whatsoever. So I would have thought just a little bit more for the faster bowlers at the start of a game. I mean, you're always looking for the ideal, aren't you? You want a pitch that gives a bit of help to the faster bowlers at the start, and then that turns towards the end of the game. It's not easy to get that ideal all the time, but that's the ideal you're looking for. And Pakistan's pace bowling stocks would still be strong. And I know they had 2 injuries that hurt them badly, and Shaheen Shah Afridi wasn't available. But if they're all fit and available, you've got stocks of fast bowlers that you would have thought, would enjoy a little bit more in the pitches.
Yeah, and you mentioned Pakistan's fast bowlers being injured. Of course, that didn't help Babar Azam one bit. But then on the other hand, England's fast bowlers really must be commended, right? That spell that Mark Wood produced in Multan, the way Jimmy and Ollie Robinson got the ball to reverse throughout. I mean, they really bent their backs. And if I have to, look at both sides and see what was the real difference between both of them, I think the fast bowling department of England really, came to the fore and showed their skills. What would you have to say about them?
Yeah, I agree. If 20 years ago, when I was playing in Pakistan, if you said that an England fast bowling attack would absolutely out bowl the home bowlers in home conditions, when we won in Pakistan in 2000, we had some excellent bowlers. Darren Gough and Andrew Caddick, Craig White did a fantastic job and utilised reverse swing really well. But of course, the skill of the home bowlers was there for all to see as well. Wasim and Waqar, who were coming towards the end of their best days at that point, but throughout the 1990s, they would have outbowled any opposition's fast bowling attack in home conditions. So you're right. England's fast bowling attack performed admirably. Really cannily used by Stokes, holding back the faster bowlers until the ball started to reverse swing, using that short ball ploy occasionally with the new ball, using Mark Wood cleverly, just in short, sharp bursts, particularly that one in Multan that turned the game England's way. So yeah, the fast bowlers did a great job. Outbowl the home side's fast bowlers, even though it wasn't first string attack that Pakistan put onto the park. But that was a big part of England's victory. I would say the pace at which England scored, and then the way the faster bowlers bowled, particularly with the old ball and reverse swing, were the 2 key factors.
Absolutely. And let's shift the focus a bit to Pakistan now. Babar Azam is a captain who is coming under a lot of criticism. The media is firing left, right, and center. And, I feel for the guy at times because this is Pakistan's leading batter. He's one of the premier batters in world cricket right now. But when it comes to captaincy, Athers, do you think that perhaps it's a good idea to lead across all three formats? And what are the intricacies to that job? Because all three formats are different. They require a different set of tactical nous. So, at large, what do you have to say about that phenomena? And do you think that Babar is fit to lead across all three formats?
Well, he gets in Pakistan's first choice team in all three formats.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a starting point, and he's a perfectly adept and able captain. So again, there's no reason why he shouldn't captain in all different formats. My issue with having a guy captain in all three formats is just simply the workload. Now, it may be slightly different for Pakistan over England. England
Mm-hmm.
are usually playing all year round, all 12 months, and play far more test matches than most other teams. They'll play 7 every summer and they'll play 7 or 8 every winter.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of test match cricket. Pakistan may not play that amount of test match cricket, so it might be slightly different. But when England had one coach, for example, Chris Silverwood, and they made him coach across all formats and made him selector as well, I just think the workload is impossible. How can you be in the middle of a World T20, a World Cup, T20 World Cup, have the Ashes starting virtually 10 days later, and be having to concentrate all your energies on the World Cup first of all, and then suddenly move to the Ashes? It just seems to me a very difficult task for both a coach and a captain to do. So England obviously had Owen Morgan as their white ball captain and Joe Root as their red ball captain. And I thought it was a terrific combination because
Mm-hmm.
each, had breaks where they could plan for their particular part of the calendar. And that's the problem with having a captain across formats, that just the workload is intense now.
Mm-hmm.
You know what it's like for international players. In a 12-month period, there's scarcely time to stop and breathe, and therefore scarcely time to stop and plan and prepare for what's coming up. So it's not so much the ability of captains to change and strategize across formats. It's just simply the workload. And
Mm-hmm.
certainly from an England perspective, as I say, it might be slightly different from Pakistan, depending on how many tests they're going to play in a year. But certainly from England's perspective, the split captains and split coaches has worked just because it allows more time to plan and prepare and rest for these
Mm-hmm.
guys in a pretty unrelenting schedule.
Right. And just to bring the focus a bit on Babar once again, do you think perhaps the fact that Ben Stokes was so proactive with his close-in fielders and then with his brave declarations, that perhaps made Babar look even worse?
Well, the contrast is always there, isn't it? I mean, it's when your team's losing, which Pakistan did, the focus always falls on the captain, and
Mm-hmm.
more so, I think, in the subcontinent. I think captains
Mm-hmm.
in India or Pakistan, less so Sri Lanka probably, but India and Pakistan in particular, it's like living in a goldfish bowl. There is no escape from the scrutiny, the pressure,
Yeah.
everybody's got an opinion, and I stand in admiration for most of the cricketers from the subcontinent who managed to deal with that. It's of a different level
Mm-hmm.
to that which we're used to in England. It's the equivalent of being a footballer in England here, where
Yeah.
that kind of level of scrutiny lands. And so it's difficult, first of all. That's the
Mm-hmm.
first thing to say. In terms of the contrast, of course, Stokes was so outstanding,
Mm-hmm.
leading in such an aggressive, in such an aggressive manner, and being so innovative with his field placings and the way that he kind of pull the strings in the field. The contrast didn't work in Babar's favour, and obviously
Mm-hmm.
Pakistan getting beaten as well, that added to it. But I've been there as captain of a losing side. Sometimes if you're just playing against a slightly better side, I'm afraid that's how it is. So I wouldn't be overly critical.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd go back to the previous point about workload and
Mm-hmm.
split responsibilities, and that certainly worked for England.
Yeah, well, we wish Babar Azam all the best. Of course, we love him here in Pakistan and we want him to keep churning those runs. And if he's the leader, then I want everyone who's watching this video to back your captain. It's not good to be overly critical of your players, and they need your support more than ever. And like Athos has pointed out, players in the subcontinent have to deal with that an awful lot anyway. So try to ease that on him, and you can be critical without crossing that line of being personal. But anyway, moving forward to our final point, Athers, is that Pakistan's test team right now is a shadow of the team that you played against in the 90s. But there have been some positives for Pakistan's in terms of some players unearthed. Of course, Saud Shakil in the middle order was very, very impressive. And Salman Agha in the lower middle order has scored runs quite consistently, along with the mystery leg spin of Abrar Ahmed. So, what do you have to make of these players? And do you think Pakistan could potentially have a bright future in Test cricket?
Well, you're right to say that it's not a patch on the great team, that I played against a lot in the 90s, but that was an exceptional era for Pakistan cricket, an exceptional group of players. And there is always a cycle that teams go through. That teams will rise and fall, and there's just natural cycles that happen in cricket and sport. You're right in that there are some interesting new players that came in. I think Abdullah Shafiq's an excellent player at the top of the order, and then the players that you mentioned. I think the key is really, as cricket moves forward and as the times change very quickly, we're in a month where there are 4 T20 franchise competitions happening. The key really is for any country, how committed are you to Test cricket, and how much do you want to kind of play and be the best at Test cricket? Because I feel with Pakistan that they're going to always produce good players. So once there is that commitment and drive to succeed at Test match cricket, and to go back to the point you made about Harry Brook, or that we were talking about Harry Brook, there's a young man who is absolutely committed to still playing 5-day cricket as well as the short forms. So I feel that if Pakistan's young cricketers coming through are of that mind, then Pakistan will have an excellent and competitive Test match team, because it's the number 1 sport in the country. It's the main sport. There's going to be talent gushing through, as there always is, and therefore, that's inevitably a good sign for the future. But it's just, as cricket changes, to keep that drive, hunger, and enthusiasm for Test match cricket in the country, that's the hope, really, that will always be there, because the talent coming through, will be unquestioned, really.
Yeah, just a follow-up question on that, Athers. You, of course, alluded to Pakistan not playing very many test matches. They average around 6 to 8 tests a year. So if Babar Azam, has a 10-year career without missing a game, he doesn't get to 100 test caps, which as fans, we really feel, because we want to see him break records and stuff like that and breach that 10,000 run barrier. But even as a team, given that the big 3, quote unquote, get to play at least a minimum of 10 to 11 test matches a year, do you think that nations which are less endowed in terms of their cricket boards do suffer by playing less test cricket? And does that have an impact on their game? And also, side by side, you've got this proliferation of T20 cricket going on. As you mentioned, you've got 4 leagues right now: the Bangladesh one, the Big Bash League, the South African and UAE leagues running in tandem. So all of this T20 cricket, does this have an adverse impact on test cricket as well?
Well, it's certainly pushed international cricket slightly to the margins in this particular month that we're talking about, because of the 4 franchise T20 competitions happening. England are playing, I think, 3 ODIs against South Africa, but Joe Root is missing those. I think he's playing in the Emirates T20. So, it's a month that's crammed full of T20, and the game is changing. Everybody's aware of that. I haven't looked at Pakistan's Future Tours program too carefully, so I can't comment on how many tests they're going to be playing over the next few years. But I was looking at South Africa's the other day, and I think South Africa only have 2-3 test match series in their next Future Tours program. That's one against England and one against Australia in 2026. Other than that, it's 2 test match series all the way, and this is for a great cricketing nation. So when you see the way that's going, you've got the new South African T20 competition, which is a great start and good crowds. But if then Test match cricket is mainly focused on series of 2 matches and no more, you can see the way the tide is flowing. And that's the challenge for the game. I still believe balance is the best way forward, because I think a game that loses Test cricket, or where Test cricket is confined to a smaller number of nations, the game would be less good for that. So a balance is what you're looking for, hopefully to keep a bigger number of nations playing a considerable amount of Test cricket. That's my hope, because I still think, you know, Test cricket is a valuable part of the whole, and I wouldn't like to see it diminished or disappear from where it is now. It's already diminished for a lot of teams, and you know, that balance can easily be lost.
Yeah, 100% concur with that. And Pakistan play a 2-match Test series versus Sri Lanka in July, I believe, and then it's another one all the way.
When England come back, it's only a 2 Test series, isn't it, for the next time?
I think so. Yeah. And then this year, barring that Sri Lanka tour in the summer, we play Test cricket in the winter, or well, Australian summer when we go to Australia. So that's like 5 Test matches at best in the, you know, foreseeable future. And that's what I feel will really, really hurt Pakistan, because if they want to compete with England, India, or Australia, or at least be at that level, because we don't get to play India, they need to at least play regular Test cricket. And Athens, when you're handing out debuts, you know, it's really difficult if you're just playing 2-match Test series, you know?
Yes, and for young players coming through, they need to see Test cricket. They need to see players committed to it and doing well in it, so that they have an ambition to play in it. And it goes back to the point we were talking about earlier about the way Stokes and McCullum have transformed this Test match team. All England's young players, regardless of how they play the game, you know, they want to be involved in Test cricket at the moment, because they see it as fun. The Test match team is going well. It looks a good place to play under Stokes and McCullum. The dressing room seems a fun place to be. So they want to play it. And that's at the moment keeping our young players attracted to Test cricket. And I hope that's the same in other countries as well.
Yep, absolutely. And we love the longest format and hope that it survives and even thrives. But that's a wrap for this episode. Thank you so much for your time, Athers. You've been extremely generous with it. And just, you know, coming from a personal place, you're someone who has been a role model over the years, someone I look up to, and someone who I try to emulate. And to have had the opportunity to rub shoulders with you this early in my career, it's been an absolute privilege for that, and the fact that you agreed to record this. So thank you so much. It's been an absolute honor.
No problems. Nice to see you.
Yep. And that's it for this episode, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, you might have heard that grassroots cricket is in its final month. We tried our best to change the landscape of cricket coverage in Pakistan. So if you liked our work, well, continue to follow us. I'm Def Mango on Twitter. Hopefully I'll find more work, but this is all coming to a close, and I hope that we go out with a bang, of course, getting you this episode with Athers, and I have a few more lined up. But yes, if you like this video, like it, share it, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends, and keep spreading the word. Thank you so much for your time. We'll catch you soon enough. That's all for now. Goodbye.